Welcome to Weekday Somatics. Um, so let's take just a moment to consciously let go of our agendas, our expectations, and really, I would encourage you to really take a look at how that's a real experience. So if we become mechanical, then we can overlook that that's a real thing. It's a real experience. So we can take this opportunity now to discover the reality of that, to actually look, be witness to this experience, this real experience. So see how it is that you can do that. I say, let's let go of the agenda. So observe how you can do that. It's first, we have to become aware of how it is that we are holding the agenda. If your mind suggests to you that you have no agenda, maybe broaden the view a little bit and see that you definitely have an agenda. We can't not have an agenda if we're alive. If we're assuming human form, we have an agenda. We have an agenda. What I'm going to get, where I'm going to go, what it's going to do for me. So we can actually observe how that requires effort, and we can observe how we're making that effort, and then surrender that. By the way, there's another little trick that we often can use to keep ourselves stuck that is completely unnecessary, which is this little trick of, oh, I'm not doing it right. I'm not having the right experience. I don't know what he's talking about. I can't do it. I don't know how to do that. I don't think I have an agenda, but he says I have an agenda, and I don't know where the agenda is, and I have to figure out what the agenda is, and then I don't know how to let it go. Am I really letting it go? I don't feel like I'm letting it go. But all of that's unnecessary. I promise you that So we are on an expedition, and I am your guide. I have I'm taking you on an expedition where I have traveled so that I can point out the sights and the scenery with confidence. And I give you my word, I promise you that what I'm telling you is true. That whatever you may think, whatever opinions you might have about your experience, about whether it's good or right or enough or not enough, or whatever ideas you might have, I promise you, just the willingness to come along for the ride, as it were, is enough. You really actually already are surrendered because you're here. And what I'm pointing to is the possibility of an even deeper surrender. So, how does that surrender happen? It happens through the willingness. And the willingness comes from the recognition that my efforts have been painful, my efforts have been disappointing, my efforts have been strenuous. And so, in that recognition, there's naturally a surrender. Whether we think that the experience that we're having is an experience of surrender or not. So, just your willingness to look where I point, if I'm pointing out the sights and scenery, just your willingness is enough. And you can trust that. And the proof will be in the pudding, because you will be able to look back upon this experience and recognize that something has shifted, something has been revealed. You have discovered some richness that you had previously overlooked. So this is a real experience. You can just look and see that there's an agenda and that there's a possibility of just letting it go. And just observe to the best of your ability how you do that. How do you let go? As we talked about in the Q&A yesterday, there's an apparent gap. First of all, we come to this expedition and we have no clue about the incredible jewel. We've heard rumor of it, but we have no clue just how spectacular it is. We don't know where to find it. Maybe we're nervous that it won't work, that we won't be able to find it. We won't be able to see it. Everybody else will be able to see it, but not us. Just another disappointment, like every other disappointment in life. But then we have this glimpse, this experience, a revelation of some kind, a discovery that truly there is a jewel. It is a jewel of stillness, pristine clarity, ease, grace, effortless power that is impossible to abuse or misuse, because it is so absolutely pure, completely trustworthy, always here. And then we come back from the expedition, and then we seem to be back in our lives. Same old struggles, same old problems, same old me. So then there we go on another expedition. This time, maybe we discover another facet of the jewel. And then we come back to our lives, and same old life, same old problems, same old me, same old struggles, same old strain, same old, same old, same old. So there's an apparent gap between the perfection, the ease, the clarity that we discover in this stillness and our manifest lives, our relationships, our finances, our health. So then what is possible is to begin to explore that gap. And that's what we're doing here. Now, I had intended this just to be a little preliminary, but this turns out this is the inquiry right now. So in case you haven't already, just take a moment to find a posture that you can inhabit with confidence for the next 30 minutes. A posture in which you have confidence that you can surrender to the support that is here. So what does that mean? It means that you are willing, you are making a commitment to remain as restfully still as possible, to not interfere with this divine process. There's an intelligence that is operating. There's an intelligence that reliably functions in every aspect of our lives, but we overlook it. It's the intelligence that is shining the sun. It's the intelligence which turns the earth around its axis. It's the intelligence which reliably produces new plants from seeds. It's the intelligence which hatches new baby birds and grows those birds into adult birds. It's the intelligence which forms the clouds. It's the intelligence which is maintaining and expanding the entire universe and beyond. And that same intelligence is operating in and as each and every one of us. It's the same intelligence that's within you. It's the same intelligence that is functioning in every cell of your body, in every nerve impulse. It's the intelligence which is beating your heart. And it's the same intelligence which is gently and sometimes not so gently reminding us of its presence, its supreme reality, and who we are. And it does that by any and every means possible, meaning that every experience that occurs is that intelligence. It's being recognized by that intelligence, received by that intelligence. It's happening in that intelligence. It is that intelligence. So we're inhabiting a posture that we have confidence that we can surrender to, that we can receive that support, that we can trust in that supreme intelligence. And each of us in this moment is coming with different conditioning, different circumstances, different constellations. So I can't tell you what that posture is for you. And that posture will not be the same as it was yesterday or the day before, although it may appear superficially to be the same. But there's a deeper sensitivity that you are the recipient of, that you are the beneficiary of, that allows you to know without thinking, without trying, exactly what that posture is. And expect that doubts will arise, because they will. The doubts arise. The fears will arise. So be very gentle. Don't push. If you push, if you strain even a little bit, then what happens is, and you've probably all recognized this, it amplifies the fears. Maybe you start out sitting upright, and initially you might have the thought, this will be okay. I can do this. But there's a little bit of strain, a little bit of push that you're enduring. And then 10 minutes later, the fear is amplified. What if I'm not okay? What if I'm injuring myself? What if I'm breaking? What if this is bad? Now you see what happens is then your attention gets sucked into these fears and worries instead of surrendering the fears and worries. Now there's an edge that is a good place for exploration, because this edge is right at just the slightest hints of the fears and anxieties and worries. But there's also a deep trust, a deep possibility of surrender, so that we are alert and awake and present, and able to consciously surrender, because we can recognize that those fears are not real. They are not about what is actually happening. This is the best place. So we want to ideally be right on the edge, riding the wave, so that we are able to consciously meet and receive and perceive clearly all of the fears, anxieties, doubts, worries. impatience, frustration, discouragement, and all the rest of it. So that may be lying down, that may be sitting up. And as we continue on our expedition, remain true to the essence of your commitment to remain still. And recognize that the real essence of that is not about physical stillness. We use physical stillness to support the intent, to support the commitment. But that's a superficial layer. So the deeper commitment is a commitment to a deeper stillness. So to the best of your ability, remain physically still, physically surrendered. And also tell the deeper truth, because as we continue on our expedition, you are responsible for managing your edge. That edge may move as we explore. So be responsive, be alive, be flexible, be like the willow bending in the breeze. So that you are not initiating the movement, but you are receptive to the natural movement of all of life, that intelligence that moves you, so that you allow yourself to be shaped. So again, if we can start to come back to recognizing this experience of letting go of the agenda, letting go of the expectations. And see that those are real experiences that you can actually participate in consciously. And that as when you participate in the experience consciously, really being present and aware, not analyzing, not trying to think your way through it step by step, but just being present to the actual reality here and now, witness to the experience, you can become aware of these subtler levels of experience, so that this gap begins to be filled in, and we can start to recognize this continuum from stillness to manifest expression, from manifest expression to stillness. It's a continuum. And that continuum is occurring within us, as us. We are one with that. We can be witness to that. At first, it's very unclear. At first, it's our first expedition. We're so identified with this material plane of existence that we don't even know that there's anything else. We're cynical, hardened. terrified, angry. Then we catch a glimpse of this jewel. For an instant, we are free, unbound, content, deeply satisfied. Then we return from the expedition to our normal lives, and we again cling to the old identities, the old struggles. So we now need to become aware of the gap, become aware of the journey. Probably heard that idea before, that it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. And it's so easy to turn that into just another sound bite, just another bit of information to repeat, trying to soothe oneself or puff oneself up. Look how smart I am, look at what I know. But we have to be honest, because we all have had enough of suffering. So we want to see the truth. We want to see the truth of what that points to, that it is about the journey. Because if you think that you need to go to a tropical retreat to be okay, and then you think, well, in order to go on the tropical retreat, I need to have an airplane ticket. And in order to have an airplane ticket, I need to have a whole lot of money. And in order to have a whole lot of money, I need to work a job that I hate, sacrifice myself, my needs. Then we get caught up in this vicious cycle of duality, where we've had the experience of that was offered to us on that tropical retreat, but then we're trapped in this lack of awareness, where we still perceive a gap, and that we have to try and overcome that by indirect means. So here's the opportunity. The opportunity is to bridge the gap so that you know precisely the way, not even just the way, but many ways, every way to the promised land, to the tropical retreat, to the undisturbed, pristine perfection that is the intelligence that is functioning perfectly always, including here and now, including in you and as you. And it's a real experience to know this not just when you have a tour guide, not just when you've gone on the retreat, not just when the conditions are such that you think that you like it, but always to know that profound contentment, stillness, clarity, ease, grace in all moments of your life. not to negate or cancel or cross out the experiences that you've judged as bad or problematic or unacceptable or too painful, but to actually shine the light of that perfection, the clarity of the recognition that this perfection is operating always in all things at all times, and that this too is that, and to have the real experience of that, not just an idea, not just a phrase that you repeat to yourself, but to actually recognize it, to really experience it at all levels of your existence, to really know beyond doubt that this too is absolutely perfect, and that this is offering a deeper revelation of that truth, and to say yes consciously. That's a real possibility. So let's traverse the pathway so that it becomes very clear. So I want you to think of a moment in which you have experienced ease. A moment in which you have known grace. Could be for half a second, or it could have been for an hour, or it could have been for a week, it could have been for a year. It doesn't matter. Any amount of time doesn't matter. It's just to recognize that you've had this experience. And if you say, oh, I can't think of any such experience, my life has just been nonstop hell, always unrelenting suffering. Well, you've been deeply asleep, haven't you? You've had that experience. So at the very least, you can recognize that in deep sleep, dreamless sleep, there's total surrender. So, such total surrender that you aren't there. And yet you are there. Whatever the mind has to say about that, you don't need to really pay it any attention, because the actual truth is so obvious if you just look at it. And you can see whether it was deep sleep or it was some other moment in the waking state, when you've experienced contentment, ease, grace, peace, clarity, okayness, you were there and you weren't there. So who was there? Well, let's look at that by recognizing who was not there. Who was not there was the arguer. Who was not there was the pessimist. Who was not there was the optimist. Who was not there was the striver. Who was not there was the worrier. Who was not there was the know-it-all. Who was not there was the unworthy one. could go on, but maybe it starts to become clear that all of the ideas of oneself that we have clung to, identified as, struggled with, tried to remedy and reconcile and appease, none of them are there in that moment of grace and recognition. Whether it was in the waking state or in the deep sleep state, none of those were there. But you were there. And the you who was there was the same you who's here now, unchanged. Because this you has no qualities. There's no description for this you who's here. But you know that you're here. You are aware that you are. So this is the real truth of who you are. Unchanging. From when you were a newborn baby, before you were a newborn baby, while awake, while asleep, always, always, always. But that's not clear. So says the conditioned mind. So let's clarify it. Now, I want you to remember a time, and it might be hard to select just one, but just choose one. It doesn't matter which one. A time when you've had a problem, a time when you've suffered, a time when you've been certain that everything is wrong and you don't even know where to begin to set it all right because it's completely overwhelming. And just play along, even if your mind says, oh, but I don't want to right now. I just want to rest in this stillness. Just play along, because here we're closing the gap. Yes, resting in the stillness is wonderful. It's the most wonderful experience. There's nothing that can compare to it. But we are all here because we want to tell the truth. So what's the truth? The truth is we're flip-flopping in our lives. We can recognize the stillness. We can enjoy that stillness. But then we flip-flop. Then we, again, cling to these identifications. So let's play along so we can close the gap. Remember a problem. Remember a time when you were sure you were suffering. Now look at that experience. Notice what that experience is. Notice how you know, as you're remembering it now, you really immerse yourself in it. And if you say, well, I don't know how to remember it, it's too hard, well, then just make it up. It doesn't matter. It's the same thing anyway. You're just making it up anyway. I want you to try and immerse yourself in this so that you can observe what this experience actually is. And then we will explore it a little bit. So how do you know that you're having a problem? How do you know that life is suffering? How do you know in this moment when you're really taking this on? Just play along. Just play along. Don't, even if your mind says, oh, I can't, I'm not able to do it, it's not working, just whatever. It's okay. I promise you, if you just are willing, it's working. Just be willing. Here's a useful prayer. My ways are unsatisfying. My ways have not produced continuous, uninterrupted perfection. No matter what I have done, no matter how close I think I've gotten, no matter how hard I've tried, it's never worked. It's never been enough. My ways have failed. When I look into the future and I project my striving and straining and struggling and efforting into the future, what I see is just more of the same. I don't see any true resolution to that. So here's my prayer. In the light of that recognition, I'm willing to surrender. I'm willing to admit I don't know. My ways are not successful. I'm open to a new way. I'm open to a way that's transcendent of my ways. I'm open to that perfect intelligence that is functioning perfectly always. And I'm open to allowing that to flow unimpeded through and as me. So all I have to do is just play along, just accept that it is working. This is working, whether I think it is or not. Tell the deeper truth. I wouldn't recognize it if it was working anyway. That's how confused I am. That's how disoriented I am. That's how little I know. So I surrender to a deeper truth. I surrender to that intelligence that does know. And I accept that that intelligence is in me. It is the truth of who I am. So whatever my mind has to say about the experience, if my mind says it's working or my mind says it's not working, I surrender that. And I just am willing to keep surrendering and trust that it is working. So let's look at this problem, this suffering, this certainty that this is hell and I need to do something about it. I mean, really, I want you to really get into this to the best of your ability. And again, don't worry if you think you're not able to do it. You're able to do it, just to the best of your ability. Some people are better, have more developed these skills of imagination and pretend, and that's fine. It doesn't matter. But just to the best of your ability, I want you to immerse yourself in this imaginary scenario. So whatever you have to do to really amp that up, you've been found out. Everybody knows now. Everybody knows about all of your terrible secrets, how shameful and horrible you are. They all know. Everybody knows. Your mother knows. Your father knows. Your children know. Your neighbors know. I know. Everybody knows. We can all see it. We can see you. We can see right through you. We know every dark, desperate, terrible thing about you. All the things you've done, all the secrets you've tried to keep hidden. We know them. We know that you're bad. We know that you're shameful. Really, let that in. There's not enough. You've run out of money. Your house is being repossessed. You're now on the streets. Nobody wants to help you because they see how horrible you are. You're all alone. It's cold. You're hungry. Everybody's spitting on you. Whatever you've got to do to really recognize the core of this false self, which is built entirely on fear. 100%. Can you see it? All of the pretense of your life. Look how important I am. Look how pretty I am. Look how intelligent I am. Look how powerful I am. You can see it's all a pretense, isn't it? Every last little bit of it, because right at the core, it's fear. The whole false persona is built on fear. No matter how you try to dress it up, when you go to sleep at night, you know you're terrified of being found out. So let that in. Now, notice how you do it. Don't try to fix it. Just be exposed. Don't try to correct it. Don't try to put yourself back together. Don't try to reassemble the pretense. Just see how you do it. See how painful it's been. So what do you do? Okay, I want to be clear. We're taking the journey. This. Pay attention, because this is the way. This is the pathway. So you recognize the pathway. Familiarize yourself with the pathway. Then you don't need to get the airline ticket anymore. You don't even need to go anywhere, because the pathway was never to a place, not in this world at least, not in time, not in space. It's a different direction. It's a real direction. It's real. This is not a fantasy. This is not something that you have to invent. It's something you can actually perceive, you can surrender to it, and you can recognize it. So again, let's take a look. Let's just drop that whole fantasy for a second. And again, I want you to just notice this effortless ease. Even if it's just for half a second, even if you feel certain that the horrors of life are right outside the walls, for just half a second, just here you are. Even if you perceive that you're in a fortress, that's fine. Just imagine that fortress for a moment, that fortress that is completely perfect. There is no force of evil that can penetrate it. None. You can let down your guard. I assure you, inside this fortress, you are absolutely safe. You're here. So for just half a second, 5 seconds, just let it all go. Surrender completely so that you can recognize this deeper truth. I am okay. My nature is ease in this moment. Don't worry about what's outside the fortress, just for this moment. Okay, now I want you to begin to journey outside of the fortress. So here we're starting from this stillness, this pristine landscape, boundless, unconditional, pure, free, content, accepting. And I want you to imagine that you're going to have to step outside of the fortress now. But I want you to get the right idea now. Because the wrong idea is that outside the fortress is all of the evil that you've imagined in its fully formed state. The lions and tigers that want to tear you apart, all the evildoers of the world, like your wife and husband and your children and your neighbors, who just want things from you and don't see you as you really are, don't appreciate you, who just want to take. So outside the fortress, it's not like that. We have to journey long and far from the fortress in order to get to that point. That's your normal life. You know where that is. But I want you to get the right idea of what's outside the fortress. Outside the fortress, it's none of that. It's just the slightest whiff of unpleasantness. It's just the slightest degree of temperature that's outside of your comfort zone. Just the slightest, just slightly cool. Just slightly unpleasant smell. Just a very, very slight sense of indigestion. Very slight. So subtle that normally in your normal state, you wouldn't even notice it, because normally you're so overwhelmed by all of the unpleasantness of your life, all the lions and tigers and neighbors and husbands and wives and so forth. So step outside of the fortress and just notice a slight discomfort, slight dis-ease, very slight. Now, you don't like that. You could go back to the fortress. But the fortress isn't, it's not quite fully satisfying now, knowing that there's something outside the fortress. So let's journey a little further. You can come back to the fortress anytime you want, but let's journey a little further. So take another step. Uh-oh. Well, now that we did that, we got ourselves in trouble, because now that we took one step away, all of the slight discomfort has actually started to take a little bit of shape. Now there's a mist, a fog. Now we can't see. Which direction is the fortress? We don't know. Slight damp chill to the air. It's just a little bit more uncomfortable than it was before. Well, now we're starting to worry. I don't know where the fortress is. I don't know what's up ahead. I don't want to stay here. I don't know which direction to go. I'm all alone, except for this fog, this mist, which has a kind of evil sense to it. Okay, let that go. It's all just fantasy, so nothing to worry about, nothing real. Now imagine that problem again. I want you to immerse yourself in that to the best of your ability. Notice how you do it. What is that experience? Contracted, fixated, obsessive, fearful. Observe how you do it though. So at that level, normally we don't recognize what we're doing because we're so identified, so contracted, so hardened, so crystallized. We don't recognize that we're doing it. It's a very crystallized state, very tamasic state, condensed, solid. But we can recognize it, so just take a look, see how you do it. You give attention to those thoughts. Why do you give attention to the thoughts? The anxious, worried thoughts, the thoughts of lack, deficiency. I'm failing, I don't have enough. Nobody appreciates me, nobody loves me. I'm a fraud, I'm going to be found out. Why do you give attention to those thoughts? Most people never ask that question. They just think they have to. Most of us just think that if we have a thought, well, we have to give attention to it. It's not true. Okay, drop that. Now go back to the fortress, this fortress of absolute protection. This is the most holy place. It's guarded by all of the archangels. It's guarded by every divine being. There's absolutely no possibility of any harm coming to you here. You are perfectly safe. Notice the experience of perfect safety. Notice that this experience is occurring in you. It's a real experience, and it's an experience that you can familiarize yourself with. Now, this time, we're going to again step outside of the fortress but it's going to be a little different this time. This time, as you step outside of the fortress, it's still very, very subtle, very, very subtle. It's the most subtle experience. But this experience has a slightly different quality to it than the one that you experienced before. This time, the air is ever so slightly pleasant. You catch a whiff of an ever so subtly pleasant aroma, fragrance. Like the very faintest whiff of rose blossoms. You take another step, and you find yourself in a sunny meadow. Birds are singing. Butterflies are flitting from flower to flower. The gentle warmth of the sun touches your skin, feels good. As you take another step, you start to see a village just off in the distance. You approach the village. And all of the activity of the village is so pleasant, smooth, flowing, generous. Can you notice that the same ease and security, peace, buoyancy that was available to you in the fortress is available to you here. It's the same. Now, let that go. Notice that without having to imagine anything, that same ease and recognition of support, safety is still here, even without any imagination, without any objects. And I want you to see if it's possible to now walk this pathway that you have discovered, even though you may not know yet that you have discovered it. You may not fully recognize it, but I want you to just know that this is in your imagination. You are safe. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to fail. Ultimately, you cannot fail. So it's okay. See if you are willing to explore walking this path into your life so that the scenery begins to become irrelevant. Because you're recognizing that the actual journey is a journey that's happening within. It's not a journey that is determined by the outside. It's not determined by the circumstances. It's not a journey that requires going anywhere. It's not a journey that requires accomplishing anything. It's not a journey that requires having a lot of money or power or knowledge. It's a journey of surrender to this innocence, purity, and perfection within yourself, and to express that as clearly and purely as possible into your life, because it is your desire, not because it's some external must or should, but because it is your desire, because you know what is pleasing to you. And you can choose that. You can choose that in your life, regardless of the circumstances, regardless of who's there, what they're saying, what they're doing, what the sounds are around you, what the smells are around you. You can begin to recognize that this is available to you. And it is a pathway, even though it's not a pathway in space and time, it is a pathway that you can become increasingly familiar with, so that you can carry this light, this stillness, this peace, this surrender, this grace, wherever you are, wherever you go, whoever you're with, whatever is happening. And again, whatever the mind has to say about that, whatever fears, doubts, or worries might arise, be willing to surrender all of that, to trust that what you have recognized is true, whether you even know that you've recognized it. I promise you that on some level you have. I really do. I promise you. I give you my word. I know that that is true. And I know that you can, you have the capacity to continue to surrender to that truth, that deeper truth, and to trust in that, and to know and then be witness to the transformative power of that in your manifest life as you continue to surrender and trust and know that that seeming gap is being filled as you continue to surrender and consciously be witness to your own traversal of the path, to see where you stumble and fall, to see where you're not clear, so that you can become clear, becomes more and more familiar, and then maybe you start to offer tours to those around you, not even having to try, but just because you become so attractive, people want to see what is it that you know. What is the secret? What is this magical place that you know of? So whatever the thoughts are, or if there are no thoughts, it's fine. Just let the thoughts come and go as they do. And begin to notice your body, the sensations that you take to indicate your body, the sensations that you take to be the skin in contact with the air. Become aware of the sounds that you interpret to be around you, and recognize that all of this is happening in you. Recognize that all that you are experiencing is the support, whether you like it or don't like it. If you don't like it, just recognize that it is pointing you to see how you're straining and struggling unnecessarily, and have patience and surrender to the process, knowing that it all is unfolding as it is. And your willingness to surrender and be patient is the agent that produces the quickening. So for the most rapid results, surrender. Trust and have patience. You can recognize what the experience of impatience is, what the experience of distrust is, and then you can surrender that. That is what it is to be patient, is to surrender the impatience, to become aware of what you call impatience. Become aware of the breath. This was a very, very deep inquiry. So if you don't yet feel ready to open your eyes, then please take as much time as you would like to let the eyes remain closed, if your eyes are closed, that is. Allow yourself to relax and rest deeply to receive the benefits of this inquiry, really to soak it in. So there's no rush. Take as much time as you need. And in fact, in some ways, this is the most important part of the inquiry, to really transition with awareness, to surrender and to receive. Because this will allow you to integrate the experience into your waking state. And it will be a very powerful way to familiarize yourself with parts of the journey that might not yet have become clear to you. This journey from formlessness to form, silence to sound. The more gentle you can be, the better. And then when you are ready to explore opening the eyes, if the eyes have been closed, that is, just see that you can do it slowly without disturbing anything, so that you can really be aware of this part of the journey from formlessness into form, to see that the form is only an idea propped up by the visual field and the habit of interpretation. It will help you to really stabilize this continuum so that you can remain aware of this stillness, even in the waking state, even with eyes open, even as you are engaging in your daily tasks, relationships, work, etc. I'm going to end the recording of the formal inquiry. So for anybody who's watching the recording, thank you for joining.